Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers CBO.
Hello, everyone. This is Uchenaya Agba. Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing knowledge forum on a Tuesday evening. Your time will not be wasted. We are going to be talking about soil compaction today. And with everything going on in the world, I'm sure everyone is eager to learn and understand how this affects your own produce in your garden or what you get off the shelf. That being said, we're joined by our esteemed guests and partners, Uriah Israel. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking, Uche. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Well, like we always do at every knowledge forum, I always want to start off with just learning where everyone is coming from, who they are, and what they're doing. So I'm going to launch this icebreaker really quickly. So if you're joining us from far, near, or close, that's okay. We always ask three questions. Where are you joining us from? What do you produce or hope to produce on your farm slash ranch? And what type of livestock do you raise or hope to raise on your farm slash ranch? And it doesn't matter what your answer is, honestly. You don't have to be producing anything. You might have a small backyard garden like I do. I'm a small scale, they call me the urban grower, and I have my little plant here and there. Or you can have 120, 200 acres, it doesn't matter. So the icebreaker has been launched. It's a poll question. Please feel free to answer. We'd love to learn where everyone is joining us from because we always have people join us from wherever and all over. We've had from all the way from I'm in San Antonio, Texas. And for me, I have like herbs, I got sweet potatoes. I attempted to grow tomatoes in the summer. Uriah said no. And but I have other things that I'm trying to grow as well. I know it's really hot right now, so definitely growing is a little challenging, but I got some seedlings that I got going on. So I'm hopeful and crossing fingers that in the next maybe hopefully 6 weeks it will cool down, but it's Texas, so probably not. That being said, please respond. I have no livestock. All I got is a few worms and crickets and all the little critters to really aerate my soil. But that's about it, which we'll probably talk about today because Phil's going to be talking about soil compaction. And you're going to learn a little bit about how some of those little livestock that we may be squeamish about, we might not necessarily like. So we are a minute 40 seconds in, usually around the 2 minute mark. I cut it off and I see a bunch of folks have answered already. Some folks, so I'm just waiting. We got three, five, four, three, two, one. All right. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let me see and let me check out what y'all said in the icebreaker. Okay. We have the first question. Where you joining us from? We had a guest say they're from Houston, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us. Another guest is in Dallas. Awesome. Another guest said part-time of the TCFR CBO working with Mr. Phil Ross. Okay. Oh, who's in our team here? I don't know, but we'll go find out soon. Another guest said Brenham, Texas. Oh, welcome, welcome. Another guest said Houston, and another guest said Prairie View. Welcome, y'all. We appreciate y'all. So the next question, what do you produce or hope to produce on your farm slash ranch? A guest said, we currently produce fruits and vegetables. We love dinosaur kale, sugar cane, jalapenos, purple sweet potatoes, etc. We also bottle our own fruit juices and detox teas and bath scrubs. I'm gonna have to hit you up because I need some vegetables. I don't want to go to no grocery store no more for vegetables. I might have to hit you up. And next guest said black eyed peas, yellow watermelon, basil, rosemary, purple pearl peas, bell pepper, cucumber, onions, red and white. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Another guest said, I want to grow bell peppers. Yes. Hey, Uriah just did a Tuesday seed. about bell peppers. And he has a haul, so he could probably give you advice on if you want to grow bell peppers. Another guest said, vegetables and fruits, welcome. Another guest said, do not own a farmer's ranch, interested in starting. And that's why we want you here. It's very exciting. This is the best place to start because we are talking directly about the soil. So the first thing you need to learn about is your soil and soil health. Thank you so much for joining us. And the last question, what type of livestock do you raise or hope to raise on your farm slash ranch? One get said, no livestock, but interested in goats. Goats are great for grazing. They'll eat anything and at the same time, they'll mow your lawn at the same time. So, hey, and the manure from them helps to feed the soil. So, perfect. Another guest said chicken. I love a good chicken now. Another guest said none, and that's fine. I have none in my yard either. Another guest said beef, cattle, goats. Ooh, beef, cattle, and goats. Perfect. And the next guy said, no livestock currently looking for land. Yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope you get to network with some of our guests here as well, because everyone is looking for some way to connect. Oh, someone just said, oh, I'm sorry, Tina. She said, didn't get a chance to complete. Grow tomatoes, okra, bell peppers, watermelon, and cantaloupe. Awesome, Tina. Thank you so much. We try to keep it at 2 minutes so we can speed things up and be respectful of your time. But definitely, the chat room is a great space for everyone to chime in, share questions, talk to each other. And of course, at the end, any question you ask in the chat room, we're going to answer and respond to. And sometimes our presenters will respond midway through. You never know. We give them the leeway to make that decision. Chrissy Edwards said, please do. Okay. And Tina said, raise cattle as well. Amazing. Julia says she is from Dallas and she has herbs and watermelon. Chickens coming soon. Now, you know what they say? You buy one chicken, then you have 100 next day. I'm just letting you know. It's just how the math works. For whatever reason, you buy one chicken, you're gonna have 100 next day. Just get it prepared and be ready. But yes, chicken are a great source of not only protein because we love chicken, but also great addition to any farm in general. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, well, we are moving along quite well, which I'm appreciative of. Uriah, you had a good week, sir, so far?
Yes, sir.
Week?
Trying to stay cool.
Uh-huh.
To keep everything, with enough water, trying to irrigate everything. And man, really had a great week. Really had a great week. Yes, sir. Hey, look.
Great.
Oh, by the way, hey, Uche, you said I told people not to grow tomatoes. Let me just say,
No,
real quick
no.
story.
Yes, sir.
I visited another farmer, and he had a shady area where his
Mm.
tomatoes were thriving. So this is one thing I'm telling people: you have to study your location. And I know I've talked about it more than once, but he was just harvesting them, and the drastic temperature will cause the pollen to become sterile, and it will also become very sticky where you won't produce any fruit. But his was in a shady spot, so he's still able to produce a lot of tomatoes.
Gosh. See, that's what I need to do. I need to either like create some kind of like shelter for them because my backyard is just full sun, no shade, no nothing. Just it takes a beating. So yeah, I attempted to, and I was humbled, but that's okay. That's the whole learning process, and
That's
that's why
right.
we're here to learn, grow, and understand what works for our yard, farm, growing area. It doesn't matter. It's all about understanding the basics because with the basics, you can expand to bigger and better production sites. Great. So let's jump right in. It's 6:10. We have an amazing presenter today, y'all. If you have not met the wonderful, amazing P. Wade Ross, he is our boss, but he is also a very, very intelligent man, and that is full of knowledge. He helped us to understand that growing starts with the soil. And if there's one thing that he is profoundly great at is helping us understand how important our soil is. And the importance of that can create the best fruits and vegetables on your growing area. So, with all that said, Mr. P. Wade Ross, welcome.
All right, I'm gonna get started, y'all. Making a black man blush again, man. You ain't
Yeah.
do that.
So someone in the chat said you're handsome.
Oh, okay. Now I'm really blushing.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna share my screen. We're gonna go ahead and get started here, y'all. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, thanks for Uriah for that story, and Uche, thank you for chiming in. I see I'm doing a pretty good job of getting our squad there. But yeah, absolutely. It all really starts in the soil. And so this, a lot of great things. Uriah, excellent job, man. These last couple knowledge forums, along with some of your Tuesday C's. I kind of wanted to take a step back as a team and really focus back on the fundamentals. It's just like anything. I don't care if it's business or sports or whatever. Without fundamentals, we can have the best intentions that we can have, but yet when it comes to farming, especially, it could become a vicious cycle of chasing our tail if we don't have those big rocks in place, if we don't have that foundational stuff. So I always like to get back to that, and that's what today's webinar is about. You're going to hear a lot of overlap. That's on purpose. You're going to hear a lot of repetition because a lot of the framework, a lot of the principles when it comes to farming that stand the test of time, going way back to when our ancestors were farming, that's just how it's going to be. They're going to always be overlapping in there. And we want to always get back there. So, when we're doing some of the things that Uriah has shared with you, and then certain things happen based on just like what he said, where you're at, what the climate is, what the weather's doing, what you're trying to grow. You can always go back to the fundamentals, hit that restart button, and see what's really going on. So, before I get too deep in the weeds, I do want to share a disclaimer because, like I said, like some of you have heard in our meetings, off the record, I'm getting a lot of folks who feathers, especially here in Texas, feathers are getting ruffled because we're sharing truthful information, but farming is a very personal thing. And sometimes people hear things and it makes them feel a certain kind of way, and that's not what we're looking to do. So, um, one of the disclaimers, one of the first ones is that Texas Small Farmers and Ranchers community-based organization respects all growers and producers, regardless of where you are in your journey. Okay, so just we understand that farming isn't easy. Okay, but it doesn't stop us from doing our job. And our job is to really provide informational frameworks. Okay. Again, frameworks. These are things to really enhance your journey as a producer. But along the way, we understand that some of these frameworks we teach may not apply, or if they do, they may apply in a different way. A lot of times we call those the tools you use under those frameworks, and that's okay. There's no one correct way, just as you heard Uriah say earlier. So it's just really taking this information and applying it as it applies and learning. Farming is learning, learning, learning. I know sometimes people introduce me as an expert and I cringe when I hear I'm not any expert. I'm just learning and open to learn. Okay. And then I like to share valuable information. That's kind of my gift and passion to the world, is just sharing. Okay. I get some information. I can't wait to get it back to y'all. So, last but not least, this training, to sum it all up, this training is void of any mandates of implementation. All we're trying to do is give you information that you can take back and apply and make your farming journey the best it can be. So, with that said, I'm gonna jump right in. I'm gonna start off with a story because we always like stories. The title is Soil Compaction. but we could probably also call this probably a better name for it would be soil structure, because soil structure is so fundamental to farming. And I just want to share to tie that together early on. I want to share a story of our journey as a family. We came back to our land after sat dormant for about 50 years from up north. We came back in the late 80s, early 90s. And my dad's dream was he took early retirement. His dream was to be a cattle rancher. So we went out and bought the most expensive cattle we can find. This is one of the Gelf. It's a German cattle. So we did everything that we read we were supposed to do, with one small exception. If you look at the ground there, we didn't have no grass, y'all. So after a few months, we was almost out of, because we had this big old herd of cattle, no way to feed them other than out of a bag. And some of you know what I'm talking about when you say that gets real old, going to that feed store and trying to feed a herd of 50 to 100 cattle. Ain't gonna work too long. So we found out real quick that we needed to become grass farmers before we got into the cattle ranching biz. So that's what we did. We diehards. So sure enough, we went over to Texas A&M and Prairie View, and we became known as one of the top grass seeders and pasture builders in the Brazos County. Even Texas A&M contracted us to do a certain things. We got that good with it. And you see our pastors in the back. That's my brother and my dad there, and that's one of our pastors down home. But so we built our grass up, and then of course we went back and added the cattle, and we became hay farmers, and the rest is history. Well, as time went on, and as regenerative agriculture came aboard, we had kind of a family split. My dad cut his teeth at Texas A&M, so he was doing more of the conventional stuff. My brother, who you see on the picture there, cut his teeth with my grandmother on one side, my grandfather on the other, both who were just naturalists. They farmed the way our ancestors farmed, and they passed that on to him. So there was some friction within our household, and me kind of just being I wasn't a soil nerd then, but I always loved learning new things. I kind of raised my hand and said, "Hey guys, let's figure this thing out." So I went out. My thing is I don't want to share stuff with folks unless I know it myself. So I went out, got all the signed up for some key trainings. I asked around. One of them was a soil food web school by the late Dr. Elaine Ingham. She was actually one of my mentors. Head on. Also, we later on, even though that was great information, it was just too, in my mind, as an educator, it was just too high level. How do we break this down where our farmers can receive it and keep moving? And we started to partner with organizations like HMI International, who had experts from all over, from Australia, Africa, what have you. And we tapped into their information. And I became certified in several different things, and we brought that back to our farm. We didn't just bring it to y'all, we brought it back to our farm during this time and implemented some of these things that we learned. And to really sum it up, what I learned was what you see here on the screen, that soil structure is fundamental to our farming. It all starts with the soil. So, can anybody tell me real quick in the chat, what's the difference between soil and dirt? And I can't see the chat, Uche, so I'm going to have you read it to me after we give folks a quick set.
Not a problem. What is the difference between soil and dirt?
Got anybody put anything in?
No, I think people are shy, but
okay, that's cool.
I think Uriah, you wanna take a stab at this?
No, I'm gonna let Phil rock it. Go ahead.
All right. Oh yeah, and I wasn't trying to put you on the
Oh,
spot.
we got some
But this is
answers coming
good.
in. We got some answers coming
But
in.
Okay.
I will say this. That's a great illustration. It says a lot. What I'm
It
looking at
does. It
says a
does.
lot. So I want to hear what everybody has to say.
Yeah, and fundamentally, y'all, that's what tonight is about. So it's good to know that folks are slow on the trigger because it means that you're in the right place.
But we got some answers. We
Okay.
got three folks. Oh, Angela says soil contains nutrients and is alive. That is true. That is true. Another guest said, Chrissy says soil has been composted.
All right, that's
Okay.
good. Good.
Richard
Nope.
said dirt equals soup. Soil out of place. I love it.
I
love that.
No Googling, y'all. You can't be using that chat GDP.
Oh, somebody's using ChatGPT for sure. Ms.
it's all
Lion
good.
said live organisms working, and Tina said soil has nutrients, dirt doesn't.
All right. So y'all got it. You got it for the most part. So the difference between soil and dirt, going back to this last slide, is a couple of y'all hit it right on the head. Soil has life in it. Dirt is typically void of life or has low levels of life. So when you talk about structure, you can see the difference between the two simply by adding life and being conscious of the difference between the two is life and no life. So I'm gonna go into a story that kind of illustrates that because I like to tell stories too. It just helps resonate. But a couple of years ago, we had a group of farmers we took down to a sheep farm, and it was part of a cohort. A soil cohort we were doing that. We wanted to kind of get them out of their element and see real farmers doing it. So one of them was going to several farms. So one of the farms we left, but prior to leaving, it was in Rogers, close to Temple area of Texas. So the Rogers area, it was a sheep farm. And heading there were a couple of days prior, there was just a series of heavy, heavy, heavy rainfall. So sure enough, on the bus ride, everything just seemed flooded out. Every farm that we passed, especially leading up once we got off the highway, once we got off I-35, and we were like, man, maybe we chose the wrong weekend to do this farm tour because everything was flooded out. And so anyway, pulling up to the farm that we were going to attend, and to our surprise, it was the exact opposite. There was nothing flooded out. Matter of fact, we couldn't see any water anywhere we were looking. However, when we walked out on the pastures, you could literally feel going from the gravel to the pastures. You could feel that sponge underneath our feet. So of course the question came up: where's all the water at? Well, guess where it was, y'all? I just said it. It was underneath our feet, exactly where it was supposed to be. So the point here is by building the soil structure with microbes, with things that are alive, it basically was benefiting this farmer when everybody else was dealing with flood. And so he was able to take what was going on with nature and make it work for him when everybody else was off. Business was out because everything was flooded out. So that was a pretty cool visit, and I'm glad we went because it just helped illustrate to our farmers what's possible with nature if you just do the fundamental things. It just separates you. And you guys always hear me say, be the exception. This farmer was being the exception, and it showed up on his plate. So when it comes to this photo right here, just really represents the soil structure of the surrounding farms that got flooded. Poor soil structure basically usually means void of life, and it's usually compacted, just like what you see on the screen here. So what I'm gonna do next is show you what that looks like in a demonstration. So what you see here looks like flour, but let's assume this is dirt. This is soil with poor structure to it, doesn't have any life. And to really help illustrate what was going on with those farms that you've seen flooded out, that we all saw flooded out when we were driving down there. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna simulate rain. So when you have soil that has no structure in it, typically what happens is what you see here. I got a little styrofoam cup and I took some little toothpicks and put holes in it to try to demonstrate a heavy rain. And this is what happens. Not only does that water run off to the side of the plate versus, sticking in the middle there where our roots are, but also what's happening on the top of where the water is landing is what we call crusting, or creating a hard pan. So what happens over time when you just have raw dirt that doesn't have any kind of soil cover over it and it's just bare, what happens is it crusts over. And a lot of times, if you take that first picture I showed you and you blow on that dirt, what happens? You got a dust storm. That soil, that topsoil that's supposed to be on your land, is now in someone else's yard. And we've seen this, some of the things I'm going to show you here, you see on way larger scales, like some of the Dust Bowl that happened just a year or so ago, I think, and some of the stuff that happened in 1930 after they got rid of the buffalo and the plains and all that. But as we say, as I shared with you, the capping and the hard pan, what happens now when after you have a heavy rain, but you have no ground cover, not the right ground cover, and that hot sun hits it, now you've got a hard pan. So now that rain is coming, it's hitting that ground, and it's either puddling right there, which is what you see here, standing water. It's going to puddle, or it's going to evaporate back up into the sky. And a lot of people go, man, I got all this flooding. What's going on? You got premature evaporation. And what happens with evaporation is you get too much of it, it goes back in the sky. What goes up has to come back down. Okay, so now all of a sudden you get more floods, and it's collecting together. And that's a lot of times what happens. Also, what happens is water is very powerful. Think of the Grand Canyon. It can cut right through, water cuts right through land. So now you got spaces where you call erosion, where not only is that water sitting there or running to the side, or running into someone else's land, but it also cuts, and it cuts away any vegetation that you already have because you have poor soil structure or compaction. Another thing that happens is that it impacts the poor soil structure, impacts the health of your plants. And a lot of times people are wondering, well, man, how come I'm all of a sudden getting all this pest pressure? Things were going good when it was springtime and it wasn't as hot out, but all of a sudden these new bugs are coming out, and you're wondering why these bugs are just eating through your plants. The reason being is that poor soil creates unhealthy plants. And despite what they want you to know, they want you to think, oh, this just happens to everybody. No, it happens. Insects go after weak, poor plants. So what you see with the poor plants is going to bring you over to pest infestation, and they're going to be eaten through. Pests typically don't eat plants that are healthy. They want the stuff that is going rotten or disease. Understand that. The folks who are selling you the pesticides and all that stuff, they don't want you to know that, because they don't want you focusing on healthy soil. Because if you focus on healthy soil, you got healthy plants. If you got healthy plants, the bugs ain't messing with it for the most part. Now, nature always gets in, so they're going to mess with some stuff, but typically they don't mess with healthy plants. And that means that these folks selling you these herbicides can't make any sales, because everybody knows that. So just like everything else that goes on, propaganda, we've been, mental conditioning is told us, hey, whatever we do, especially with regenerative ag, the myth is, oh, well, regenerative ag, you still can't overcome the pesticides. Oh, yes, you can, by creating healthy plants through healthy soil. All right. And last but not least, Uche, I had to get this one in there, is the myth about what is that called, Uche? It's called a weed. So
Yeah.
the myth about weed.
Yeah.
So when y'all see a weed, the myth is that it's just, it is ugly. I'm there with you, but that weed is there for a reason. A weed is really trying to fix your soil. It's telling you, it's a sign that, hey, you have some deficiencies. And just like the scab you get on your arm, if you fall down and scrape it, that weed is trying to do what nature does to add back in what's deficient. So that's a not such a bad thing. It's a good thing right there. I think that's a dandelion if I'm looking at it right. Hey, we can eat dandelions, especially these days where we ain't buying nothing at the grocery store. Dandelions are edible. Say what you want. That filled many abilities back in the day. So again, part of the mental conditioning, we've got to kind of take a step back and be more practical of what we're looking at. Okay, um, so what I want to share with you in contrast to what I just showed you with those farmers who were flooded out basically because they had no life in their soil and their soil structure became bad. The contract is the farmer who had the sheep farm that wasn't having to deal with any of that stuff. He simply put, his soil had life in it. So when I say life in it, really what I'm talking about is just the soil food web, such things as not only the organic matter like leaves and stuff that fall on the ground, which we encourage you, don't rake up them leaves, let them do what nature wants them to do, which is decay and go back into the soil and allow certain let the microbes that are in the soil, such things as bacteria, fungi, nematodes, and protozoas, all the things you see on here. I know that I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with all those things, but there's life underneath your feet, a whole world that needs to be fed. And they're living creatures. Soil is living. Okay, y'all. That's what we want to always think moving forward. That soil is your friend, number one. You take care of it, it will take care of you, understanding that there's creatures that are made up in that soil. And if you build that soil right, and where it's healthy, you see that dark chocolate color that you see there, that's really what you're looking for with it. You want those creatures below your feet to survive and thrive. The other thing you want to create is pathways. If you look closer, that's kind of under the microscope. There's little pathways and channels because live creatures need what? They need food, they need water, they need air, just like we do. Okay. That's why you hear me seeing it ruffles feathers. I tell folks, man, I don't like seeing stuff like compost in a bag sitting on a shelf because that tells me that whatever was living in there is probably dead right now. Do they want you to know that? No, they're gonna sell you what if you buying it, they're gonna sell it to you. Trust that. I thought I had this slide up. I didn't have that up. Sorry. So this is the slide I was talking about here. Over here is what healthy soil looks like if you you take a shovel and dig underneath the ground. And then right here is what I talked about, what it actually looks like under the microscope, where you don't want it like the dirt that had life, that had no life in it. You want it with life, it's going to have channels and pathways for your water, for your air, and for different food and bacteria and creatures to walk through, to go through and get the food that they need at the root of the base of the root systems. So I'm going to show you what it looked like. I'm going to give you a demonstration in contrast to the flooding, what it looked like for the farmer whose all his water was underneath his feet where it was supposed to be. So going back to that example Um, the bread represents life. It's got yeast in it, it's got other ingredients in it, but it's got life in it. Unlike what you see right next to it, the flour, which is just basically void of life. Matter of fact, you don't want flour to have no life in it. The little boll weevils and stuff, that's a problem. That's a problem anyway. But the difference is that bread in this example, in this demo, this is usually something we share at some of our workshops to really have things hit home, is full of life. And because it's full of life, guess what happens when it gets a heavy rain? Instead of the water running to the side like you see in the red, on the blue plate, it's going exactly where you want it. The water is stored right where you want it, at the root systems where plants are growing, and next to your roots. And that's really the goal. One of the main goals of all of us as farmers is to get our soil and build our soil to a place where we can collect water and retain water. Because say what you want, one of the top expenses in farming is water. Even if you got an irrigation system, even if you got a good deal right now with your water district, guess what's going to happen next? We already see it with the food. What they ain't telling you about is that water. That water is going to be real, real expensive. So even if you got an irrigation system, don't get caught up where you thinking you good to go, because once they turn them rates up, that's going to be way more expensive than food. Because what do? It's a controlled thing, and that's what you're seeing in the news right now. They're talking lightly about it, but if you're hearing about it, it's already happening, y'all. So they just so it's coming out. So it behooves all of us on this call to get our soil right to a point where our soil becomes a soil sponge, just like what you've seen with the sheep farming, what you see displayed on the screen. So I guess the next question becomes, well, how do Phil, how do we do that? What are some of the things that we can do? And going back to what Uriah said earlier, you work in frameworks, and these are some of the frameworks that you want to work with. One being protection. You want to put some skin on your land. Okay. If you see bare spots, the number one rule for soil structure and maintaining soil structure is cover bare spots. And you can do that with natural leaves. Anytime I see leaves, I'm collecting all mine. Why? Because I already know that it's already locally inoculated with all the stuff that my farm needs to grow. If I don't have to bring foreign stuff onto my land, all the better. So what usually falls every year, depending on the type of trees you got, is leaves. I'm giving that one to y'all for free. That's probably one of the best tools that you have. That's regeneration, meaning it regenerates itself. It grows, it falls, it hits the ground, it feeds the soil underneath, and then you grow more stuff, and it rinse and repeat. So nothing better than having mulch in the form of leaves, but that also can serve as hay or cut grass. Um, you can there's some other stuff. I know a lot of people use wood chips, or if they got fallen trees, don't haul them trees off. Again, they already have all the microbes and everything that are native to your land. Get you somebody, or find somebody who's got a wood chipper, and you use that. You create piles and use that as mulch for yourself. There's also what's called litter. The difference between mulch and litter, all litter is it's dead grass that's still kind of rooted in the ground. So a lot of times, especially if you got animals, you just put those animals out there and they'll knock them over. Once it touches the ground, it's going to, similar to what leaves do, it's going to go right back into the ground. There's living mulch, things such as cover crops or planting things. Maybe you got a bunch of bare area, and you also want to create edible plants. Guess what you do? You plant edible plants, and you use that as ground cover. But that can be also used as skin. But you always want to have skin, because if you don't have skin, what happens?
You die.
You die. Absolutely. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing that's going on farms, they don't have any ground cover. They don't have any skin on it. So they got stuff out there. It might look good for a season, but it's dying. It's not regenerating itself. And then what we've been conditioned to do is, oh shoot, it's, I got stuff dying in my garden. Let me go get some synthetic fertilizer. Let me go get some herbicide. All the things that's killing the world beneath your feet. You guys can start understanding why they say I ruffle feathers. A lot of the establishment don't want y'all to know this stuff. So also you want to build soil structure. Okay, and a good way to do that, you can do that a number of different ways. Again, I'm just giving you frameworks, and then what you're going to hear next under these frameworks are just some of the tools you can use. One being native plants. Native plants, when you are allowing things to grow that have been laying dormant in the soil, guess what? You're also using less water to do it because it's already native. It grows naturally there. It's already acclimated. Okay. You also want to build your soil with such things as adding diversity and companion planting and crop rotation. Diversity is not a bad thing. They've again mentally conditioned us to freak out when we see something growing next to something. Guess what that's called? That's called soil stability. If you go back and you look close on the sheep farmer, he had all kinds of different varieties. And a lot of it, we as farmers, being uneducated or being miseducated, we were calling them weeds. What's going on with all these weeds? And you know what the farmer's answer was? He said, look at my sheep. He had a bunch of sheep out there. What are they doing? We was like, huh? He said, what are my sheep doing? We said, they're laying down. He said, what time of the morning is it? We was like, it's about 9, 9 a.m. And they laying down when everybody else's sheep or livestock is foraging for food. His are laying down. Why? Because the thing that we were calling weeds were 20, 30%, had 20 and 30% more nutrient density in it than the grass that they tell us to grow. So keep that in mind. Build your soil. Native plants are not a bad thing. Don't get so caught up in weeds without understanding really what's growing there. Follow your animals around. If you got animals, if they eating it, you good. Animals are smarter than us. They ain't gonna eat nothing poisonous. And if they do, they're gonna spit it out. They ain't gonna keep eating it. So follow your animals around that and check that out. Animal impact. So a lot of times when we're trying to build the structure of our soil, I already talked about litter and how animals come in and they push your the existing dead grass down. Now your other grass that's coming up, the new grass, the baby grass can now get sunlight. And what do we need? Photosynthesis. That's exactly what they need. So animal impact is huge. What are they doing? They're peeing, they're pooping. It's already built in. So probably the best way to build soil is through adding animals and creating some type of density, which is going down a whole nother rabbit hole. So I won't go too far there. But don't fret if you don't have animals, because what can you do? You can do what you just see on the screen there in that picture. You can create compost and compost extracts that go right to the soil root and grow. And you can use the same things that an animal. You can take animal manure. You can take some of the organic matter like leaves or grass, and you can take some of the stuff that's still green, throw that in the pile too, and have a good mixture. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We actually have a training on creating your own compost as well. But there's ways, y'all. And for me, it makes all the sense in the world to always be building your soil. If you don't have soil that's there right now, because based on everything I showed you, to me, if I'm starting out and I know I'm going to start my farm in a year, what am I doing? Create my compost. That's what I'm doing. And guess what? Once my compost is ready to go, I'm creating extract, or I'm just putting it right there and I'm building my soil. Sure, it's not the most sexy thing in the world. As gardeners, we love to grow stuff. I get that. I understand that. But guess what? You build it the right way, you get those fundamentals as your baseline, everything else, you take care of your soil is going to take care of you, and you're going to sit back and many of these farmers who've implemented these things are sitting back going, man, I thought they said farming was hard. It is if if you're trying to tame your land, but if you just work with your land, that's a whole different game. And you want to learn that. Some of you guys who are brand new to farming, you want to learn that now versus, that day that you throwing down that rake saying this is way too hard. All right. So last but certainly not least, I do want to mention low soil disturbance, and that can come in a number of different forms. One is no or low till, and that just basically means I know we've got all caught up in tilling the land. Every time I talk to a farmer, hey, I want to get started. When should I, till up the land? You don't want to till up that land if you don't have to. You want to try not to disturb the land because of what I told you early on. There's a whole world underneath your feet called the soil food web. Now you're slicing and dicing, and all of a sudden you got all these weeds that show up because now you got dead. You don't have any living things under the soil. You just killed them all. So you want to do there's certain things that you can do like low till or no till. We won't go down any of these rabbit holes today, but just wanted to make you aware. You can build on top of the soil. Some of the things they call lasagna gardening, where you instead of, especially grass, sometimes grass can be invasive if you're trying to grow certain things. Just put some cardboard on there, and and then put your soil and your lasagna. You might even put some logs in there because logs tend to grab, act like a sponge and retain water. So there's things that you can do to build up your soil without having to cut your soil up. Okay, and cut those living things that are underneath there, which creates compaction, and it kills the very living things that you want to do the farming for you. All right. Also, as you see in the screen here, you can purposely design pathways for walking. Your garden is right there in the middle or off to the side. Create a pathway for yourself. It doesn't have to be as nice as what you see on the screen. It can be wood chips or whatever, but create a walking pathway so you can get to and from your garden, your growing areas is another way to do it. You can create what we call swells, where you see some of those mounds that people create, especially if you got equipment, and make it just wide enough for your tires to go on there. So now you've just created, you created by design, farming a growing area where you're not killing the very things that you want to enhance. All right. Another thing is contour and gill farming, where sometimes you walk the land, you see the terrain, and maybe you have some hills and you can follow the water path. Well, guess what? That might be where you want to create your garden, is right where all the water is going, So those are some of the things to think about, y'all. There's one more I want to share with y'all, and then we go on, because I know I'm getting close to time, but it's often overlooked, and that's what you see on the screen there. It's rest. Rest is a very important, you can call it a tool, you can call it a framework, whatever, but it's very, very important thing that you want to consider when you're farming. And when I say rest, we just mean just that. Here's a picture of some brangus that we had out on our land a couple of years ago, and then they kept knocking my dad over. So my brother and I looked at ourselves, you know what? These is Papa Ross's friends, but man, we got to, we don't want to come out here one day, and see him in a bad situation. So we ended up getting rid of the cows, and we ended up adding just a small sheep. And then we found out, well, man, we can't have our sheep way out there because a coyote is going to have a nice meal. So, Ken was sitting there. We tried it for a little bit. Ken would be sitting there with his rifle, but that wasn't working. So really, this land for a couple of years just went untouched. And after a couple of years of going untouched, here's what that land looked like. Is that crazy or what? So our initial instinct, because we gave the land rest, so our initial instinct, just like any conventional mindset, we were going, okay, wait a minute, we let the land rest. Now we got to clear all these trees, land always is trying to, it's called succession, is always trying to go back to its original state. It's always trying to become a forest. If y'all didn't know, if you wonder why all that new growth is growing in your red rocks, land is always trying to go back to its original state. So we originally were saying, man, we got in, it was driving my dad crazy. So but then we went out on the land and we noticed not only were these trees fixing the soil as nitrogen fixers, but all of a sudden, grass and forage that really we only could use a certain time of year because it was flood land was now doing like the sheep farmers. It was now, where normally it would be flooded a certain time of year and it'd be unusable land, we were retaining that land and it was building pasture for us. So we took a step back and gained 15 to 20 new acres of usable forage that we are now considering also doing some civil pasture stuff with it, where we grow within amongst the trees, we're growing fruits and vegetables, and also letting our cattle graze there year round now because the grass has been built up. So I share that with you to say that sometimes, just like the sheep farmer, sometimes when you just let nature do what it do, that it's going to work for you. So just wanted to share that. But rest is also a very, very, very important tool that can be used as your benefit. So I'm winding down here. I'm gonna just share these key points with you as to why your soil structure, soil compaction, but I call it soil structure because that's really what it is number one, that your soil, always remember your soil is alive. And alive things need just what you and I need. We need protection or shelter. We need food. We need air. We need water. Essential for us to survive and thrive. Next, healthy soil equals healthy plants. Don't let them tell you nothing different. Folks don't want you to know that because they want you buying stuff off of their shelves that's keeping you broke and putting money in their pocket. Healthy plants reduce plant disease. I already shared with you that plants and insects like plants that are unhealthy. So healthy soil, healthy plants reduces disease, and that reduces your pest pressure. And then with less pest pressure, you have less inputs. You're spraying less synthetic stuff on your land and in your garden and your growing spaces, which equals higher yields. And with that, if you have less inputs and higher yields, guess what else you have? For some of us who are trying to farm and monetize our land, we get higher profits. So some of the next steps for you is observe. Go out on your land, observe it, find out where some of those bare spots are on your land, and take notes. Have a notepad with you. Find out, where it's feeling hard when you walk out there. Does it feel hard on the bottom of your feet, or does it feel spongy? Okay. Is there hills that are going on that are on your land that, and if there are, where's that water running to? So observe your land. Stuff that you ain't going, a lot of times you go to some of these other agencies, they're not telling you that stuff. And this is fundamental stuff. Before you ever go into an agency, you want to do this kind of stuff because it's going to save you unnecessary steps, time, and money. Okay. Then you want to think and reflect. Like Uriah said, what are you trying to grow? Where do you live? What's the climate of it? Do you have, or have over the last couple of years, have you had periods of really, really bad weather? When does that come? All those different things. Do you have animals? And do you not have animals? Does it make more sense for you to go the compost route? Those are all things that you want to think about as a farmer, and then design your plan or your game plan moving forward, implement it, do it in small, practical ways. Don't take up cover cropping where you're all of a sudden going from never cover cropping or no-till to trying to do 100 acres. No, pick a half an acre and create your own experiment, because what works in a small scale is probably going to work in a bigger scale, but you've got to learn it. You got to learn it, what works on your place. And then guess what? You just repeat. You rinse and repeat. Go back, you observe some more. Okay. And you make the changes and keep going. That's called farming, y'all. That's how we do it. So I'm gonna stop there because I feel like I've been running my mouth, talking a lot. I got it in under
I
under
know.
the hour though, so
Hey,
I'm okay.
thank you, Phil. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, y'all. We've reached the Q&A session, and I got questions because my soil is ugh. That's the only way I can describe it right now. Um, but I guess my first question for you, Phil, is okay. How do I let me say this right? Is it possible that your soil can look healthy on the surface but still be compacted underneath? Is that something that is possible? Please educate
Yeah,
us.
so there, when you say soil looks healthy, that's the dilemma for most of us farmers. I'm a soil biologist. I'm not bragging, but I got a right here. I've got a microscope, so I can kind of cheat a little bit. Most farmers don't have it, and even if they're looking under the microscope, they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
So there are ways, and we'll do some trainings where you can look at the top of the soil, and it's going to give you pretty good signs of what's going on underneath your soil. Um, Such as some of the things I shared on the screen. Do you have bare spots in the soil? Is the litter, on the grass, let's say you're doing pastures, is it touching the ground, and is it decaying back into the ground, or is it just sitting on top of the ground? Is there canopy? Do you have enough greenery, that's going to capture the sun? Is it broadly, or is there different spots where it is and isn't? So to answer your question, it's almost impossible to really know what's going on in your soil unless you take a shovel and you go down, 3 inches to 3 feet and get a nice chunk of it. And just like you saw in one of those pictures, you look at it, and even then, you don't really know until you get it under the microscope. But you can at least, tell there's certain things such as smelling it. Does it smell like the forest floor? And if y'all don't know what the forest floor smells like, just go out to a walking path where there's a lot of greenery. Go somewhere where you kind of know, there's people haven't disturbed the ground. Go about 3 inches deep, smell it. That's what your soil should be smelling like. So, and that's what we teach in our compost class.
Yeah. Hey Phil, I had a good question. How can you determine if your soil is compacted without like using expensive equipment, or maybe even some type of expensive soil test? I mean, I guess there should be a way that you can like kind of.
Yeah, you can. It's kind of expensive. It's usually upwards of $100. You can use what's called a refractometer.
Mm.
You could just press down on it. It's going to tell you how compacted it is. That's one. Like I said before, you can use a shovel to see how deep your roots are getting, or how shallow they are. If you want to get real inexpensive, just take a screwdriver and put it in the topsoil, and if it ain't getting deep, you got soil compaction. You need to build that soil up, and we can show you certain ways. There's all kinds of different methods that might fit what you're trying to do.
All right. We have a question from Julia in the chat. She says
Julia,
the worms that eat my greens are because of the soil are because of the soil question mark. Where can we get a copy of the soil food web? Is it okay to get leaves from other properties?
to get what was that question? Lee?
Leaves from other properties.
Oh, okay. So, soil, you got to build it, and there's no way around that. I shared a few different ways. we'll do some more trainings on the soil, especially if you're, Julie, I know you're in the city limits, so, but you're talking about having chickens out there. So we can show you how to use those chickens and create a chicken tractor and use that as a normal, create systems that are going to build your soil. Some of you may not have animals and you have to do it different ways. You can do it with manure. You can do it with other high nitrogen things such as alfalfa pellets. There's ways to get it there, and we'll show you. As I said earlier, there's no right or wrong way, but you do have to build it. And like I said earlier, whether you're a new farmer or you're new to building your soil, I think everybody should always be building their soil. And you'll eventually get to a point where your soil is in such good shape, this is going to just regenerate itself anyway. You're not going to have to keep going in there and doing some of that stuff you had early. And people may ask, well, how long is that? How long does it take? It depends, but it can take as little as one season, depending on what your starting point is, how poor your soil is, and where you need to get to, and what you're growing. It can take, 2 or 3 growing seasons. It can take 2 or 3 years, depending on how committed you are and what your situation is. I have talked to people and they complain it to me because it ain't working, because they got you got to go all in. That's why I said if you want to just start small, great. But if you're trying to do the old way and mix it in with the new way, it ain't going to work, y'all. I'm just telling you. If you're trying to do the chemical thing because you want, I know what Phil said, but then do a small trial. Don't do a big area, do a small area. We tend to try to bite off more than we should be chewing on while we're still learning. Do a small area, then you can always go bigger. There was another question in there that I'm forgetting.
Is where can we get a copy of the Soil Food Web?
Oh, so we'll send you a copy of that. We'll send you a copy of and we're going to send you a recording of this now. So
yes,
but the training, the actual school and the training and what goes in there, that's a training that we give that you basically sign up for. It's called what's it called, Uche? Composting 101 or something
Composting
like that.
101.
Yeah,
Composting 101.
and we'll show you how to create your own food web on your own place. Yes, you can use other people's leaves if you don't have your own preferences to use your own, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, a good question. And Phil, thanks for saying that last part about using other people's leaves. That was something that we used to practice that, like, is actually people would rake up their leaves, blow them, put them in bags. And I used to, when I worked at a certain site in Atlanta, we used to drive around and literally take those leaves from off the people's curbs and use those leaves in soil production, and that was a big thing. I had a question for you. How can you? I think you touched this a little bit. How can, let's say you have a spot, or not maybe a big place, but how some people actually, how can you prevent compaction on your site, like with your equipment, movement, things like that? Some people, yeah, go ahead. How can you?
So for me and everybody, again, I ruffle feathers all the time. But the real is to what we do is to learn how to create your own compost. If you're going, there's a reason why you're using equipment. What is that reason? And can that be accomplished with compost or with, like us? We got like a little ATV, gator type of thing. We create our compost, and instead of using a big heavy tractor, which we have because I told you our past history, we turn that into compost extract and we put it on the back of an ATV with a little applicator boom, and then we just drench. We drench our and we make and now because it's not a big heavy equipment, we're not creating the same compaction. Sometimes there's no way to get around it. Sometimes depending on your growing area, maybe it's just an acre or half an acre, especially if you're just starting out, just get you a backpack sprayer, put it on your backpack and do the same thing, hold it and just drench your land. It's probably more work, but you're still learning. You're still learning what you do. So there's so many different ways to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Make the rows, if you are using a small tractor or a big tractor, make the rows wide enough where the lanes, where you're not just creating new compaction every time you go out. Make the rows where the lane, where it's wide enough where your wheels are going to hit the same spot every time that you're not growing in. Create pathways. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. It's just practical stuff. Sometimes we're so quick to do what everybody else is doing because this is always the way it's done. And sometimes we got to take a step back and go, man, why am I doing it this way? Do what's right.
All right.
For you, I should say.
So we got the chat is buzzing.
Uh-oh.
Julia had a follow-up question, and you can answer it, and we have some more. But Julia said, "Do possums count as animals?"
Yeah, they count as wildlife.
They count as wildlife.
Yeah, it's an animal. Yeah.
They don't count as livestock, but they count as wildlife.
Hey, and they do the same thing that livestock will do. You just can't eat them.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, some people can. I won't, but some people can. But yes, okay.
But yes, they do count as wildlife, and wildlife do factor in all the more, just like honeybees do too. All the more reason you don't want to be spraying stuff that's going to be killing your honeybees that are landing on your flowers. Now you wonder how come they're not getting pollinated because you spraying stuff out there that's not natural to the environment.
All right. And we had a comment from Richard. Thank you for the excellent down-to-earth information. I look forward to listening to your cover crops presentation. I knew you would like that because I know Phil's very important about making sure we get it. You know, we are talking to folks directly. No big fluff words, just say directly. So yes, I thought you'd like that. Deidre said, no worms. No, worms are a sign of healthy soil. Yes, worms are a sign of healthy soil. And then Christy, she said, I am the community compost director with my county. They will be supplying me food waste, carbon products, etc. to create a community supply of soil for mulching and gardening. I'm so new to this, and I have an acre and a half of land in the city for production. I need some pointers / direction on a framework for this opportunity to grow into a larger scale. Oof.
All right. Is it okay to ask what city, or is that too? Is that
Chrissy? If you don't mind sharing your city, Houston.
Okay, perfect. I'll be in Houston Saturday.
That's it. That's it. Okay, there you go, Christy.
I'll be over in Fifth Ward at a church, so we might need to hook up after this. But to answer your question, it depends. It depends on a number of things. Especially when you say food waste. Me personally, I don't like dealing with flies. I just don't like flies. So what I do is I use the systems that are already there on my farm, and I create what's called thermal compost, and then I use that for my worms because I don't want to be fighting off flies. Now, a lot of times that's because my worm bin is close to my house, but either way, I just don't like flies. So there's ways to do it. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, but there's ways to do it where you don't have to have flies in there. There's ways to do it where you're killing toxic stuff like some of this explosive diarrhea stuff. We do hot thermal composting. That's the way we do it. Anything that's toxic and a pathogen ain't gonna survive. It's done. So we do that. So we can show you how to do some of those things in principle, but it really depends on what you're looking to do and the resources. We can show you how to do it with and have to fight off the flies and stuff, but that's just me, a personal pet peeve that I have. But also understand that there's different types of worms too. There's composting worms, and then there's soil worms, and if you find things like earthworms in your soil, great sign, but you don't want to be ordering composting worms like red wigglers and stuff like that, which are designed to eat stuff and poop it out and create great compost, but they don't do so good in your garden. So we teach all that stuff in those little intricacies in the composting class, just so you're aware. But there's all kinds of different ways people use compost. And when you talk food waste, we can do that too, and we can use it. Me personally, I just don't like flies.
Well,
Hey,
can
me neither.
all right.
I just want to add to that, Christy. We're gonna share with you the admin email. Feel free to email us so that we can connect you with Phil and the whole team while in Houston. Christy did mention that her property is 5 minutes away from the Fifth Ward, so it's pretty close. At the same time, our YouTube page has a plethora of information on there about composting. So, and Phil and Uriah go into a variety of methodologies and composting. Yes, it's not if you want the full education, that is coming, and there's going to be a price to it because it's going to be given to you in an educational format for you to absorb. On our YouTube is all over the place because hey, it's YouTube, it's YouTube University, but you can always utilize some of the tips and tricks on our YouTube page so that you can learn, grow, and understand what your soil does. Uriah?
I just wanted to touch base about the I think I didn't get the full question as far as flies and compost is concerned, but understand normally if you're building a compost pile, like I use different techniques for composting also, and you want to start off. I'm going to use some term. You want to start off with your carbon. Carbon is your brown dry, your dry leaves. That's why it's so valuable because your compost pile is going to be probably 2/3 brown and dry. Then you add your nitrogen, which is your fruit and your vegetable scraps, or your food, like you said, your food scraps. You have to cover those things up with the brown and dry because you will attract flies. That's just part of the process. But if you cover those up with leaves, brown leaves, dry, even hay, even some I use wood shavings sometimes, and just cover that stuff up. Otherwise, it will be a feast for your flies and any other bugs. They will attack that, and it will, that will be a fly, like a big fly festival feast, if you will. So you want to cover that up. That's one of the best ways to do that is you use your leaves to cover up any of that moist food scraps. That's how I do it.
Another tip for y'all just is them coffee grounds. Use coffee grounds. It's considered green stuff, but if you can stop by a Starbucks or a coffee shop and they are looking to get rid of some extra stuff and take it off their hands, that's always a good thing to do. Just know what coffee does. It's like anything else. It'll get mold and mildew if you don't put it like in the freezer or refrigerated too, and it can take up space pretty quick depending on how big a compost pile you want. But that's also, but if you're looking like, let's say, on Friday you're going to be making some compost, it's good to go by pick that up in big pieces. Or if you just know you drink coffee, you're a coffee lover, don't throw that out. Don't throw the grounds out. Start collecting it and putting it in your fridge or freezer. Good. Good material to have to make your compost nice and rich.
All right, all right. Looks like we're going. Christy just added to it. She said, "Yes, I just finished obtaining my master composter certification." Yes, you are correct. Awesome. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
We'll be talking to Christy for sure. I got your info.
Yes. So, and of course, if anyone has any more questions, feel free to jump in the chat and share. We are here to assist and answer any question you might
I'm
have.
surprised we ain't had no explosive diarrhea.
Look, I got a story for y'all. So, first of all, I went to Costco earlier today to just buy some, stuff. Costco, hey, bulk buying, stock up. And tell me why a particular farm that is linked to all of the whatever is apparently the supplier for them. And their name was clearly out there. And I saw this I saw it. I was just like, oh my God, I can't buy vegetables today. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I got some, I know some farmers. I'm going to ask them. I should be good. But I saw this, this older, not older, but I mean, she was older than me, a black lady. And she was like picking up the produce and was like looking at it because they were discounted heavily and cheap. And I had to walk, was like, don't do that. I felt like Bilbo Bag. I felt like the like voice of God. Don't do that. She looked at it like, what? Don't who are you? I was like, don't buy that, ma'am. Don't do that. That's where people are having to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Food.
Mm.
And she was like, really? I was like, yep. You can see their name. It's everywhere. That's why it's super cheap. And she backed off. And I left. I didn't provide any more information, but I feel, it's really hard because, there are people right now who are trying to struggle to really figure out where to get their food from. And of course, vegetables, where you're trying to have a balanced diet, if vegetables are not healthy anymore, or you're restricted from where you can get this food, it's so important now people start understanding, okay, soil management, because like you said, if your soil is good, pesticides will not flourish on that plant because those pesticides that are causing the issue are feeding on those plants. They're having a good time because the soil was not managed properly. And when they're healed, they just love it. It's not like your simple like salmonella or all those other things. No, it's not from dirty hands. This is from an actual pest that is just thriving on the vegetable. So,
Hey, Uche, the cyclospora is a microscopic parasite.
parasite, yes.
Yeah, so you're not gonna really be able to see it. And I know for a fact, a lot of these farms using these poor migrant workers, sometimes they don't provide the proper sanitation. And next thing you know, they're pooping out there, they're doing all these different things, and it ends up in our triple washed salad that we think, like, and you should wash whatever you get. You should definitely like wash it. I use vinegar, I use baking soda to wash it. And I do have to say this one last thing. Find your local farmers markets, and we have to start patronizing our farmers markets. Yeah, it's not going to be at the price Taylor Farms is because how much they produce, but you definitely want to start patronizing your local farmers markets. The food is going to be healthier. You're not going to be dealing with the parasites, and you're going to feel great about supporting a local farm. Yeah,
I got one better. Find your local Texas bypass program. Matter of fact, Uche, put that in the chat. Hey,
Yeah.
you got to start circulating this dollar, make this dollar bounce, y'all.
Yes, sir.
But I think it's a bigger problem to me because I'm weird like that. I just look at stuff and I see something totally different. What I see is the major problem is a food cartel, meaning there's only a few players. So when something like this happens, which is bound to happen, you're gonna have some food safety issues. Somebody gonna not wash their hands or come to work, with some kind of cold or something that's gonna pass on to somebody else. That's going to happen. The fundamental problem is if you only got 2 or 3 players that all the food is coming from, then and when that do happen, it's more likely to be epidemic, like what you're hearing all over the news versus, hey, one small problem that we don't never hear about. That's the issue. And that's why I said our Texas Bypass, which is a local food purchasing program that's coming to your city. We're piloting it in Dallas Fort Worth, and we got a lot of scared farmers who, when stuff is unfamiliar and it's coming from folks who look like us, we don't have a lot of trust. So it's off to a slower start. But that's all right. We're gonna get the folks who are already leaning forward, and we're gonna get them up and running. That could be y'all too. Um, Talk to some of the farmers who are already on here. The checks is real, and guess what? They ain't even checks. They wires that are going right into your account the next day. So, because we know how our folks are, we can't have y'all out here talking bad when we trying to set the table for you. But we got some stuff going too. So yeah, just like Uriah said, local farmers markets, but let's start circulating this dollar because at the end
Mm.
of the day, we all got to eat every
Yeah.
day.
Yes,
Not
sir.
sometimes, every day.
Every day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, it is 7:20. I think we're early, but that's okay. Everyone, I know you heard Phil talk about the Texas Bypass Program. I just dropped the link to the Texas Bypass Program in the chat. Please check it out. It's an opportunity where if you know a local grower or if you're a local grower and looking to expand your operations or sell your produce, small scale, big scale, it doesn't matter. We provide and facilitate the process for us to purchase your produce for you and deliver it to your community, which is important. We do not believe in how far I'm just shocked by how far some of our vegetables travel before they get to our tables, and that to me says a lot. So it's so important to shop local, visit a farmer's market, get to know your local farmer because they're only a few miles away if they're in a farmer's market. They're not going more, maybe 3 hours at most because that's a long drive for anyone, 3 hours to come to a farmer's market. But most times they're
Right.
even less. Maybe they're like 45, maybe 30 minutes away. And that's
Yeah.
great because you know that your food is picked fresh, it's delivered fresh, it's taken care of. They care about it because they care about what they're growing on their land. So it's so important. It's so important for you all to take care of yourselves. It's not just about, no longer about, oh, it's expensive. No, no. You need to take care of your health because your health is all that matters. Because in the end, if something happens to you, no one's going to care. Just be real. It's just going to be another number in the health chart. I'll tell you that. All right, y'all. Well, we are wrapping up in the end. An email is going to go out in the next 48 hours with a recording to our YouTube. Please check out our YouTube page. We have other educational videos on there. Lots and lots of videos to learn from. Subscribe to it as well if you have not subscribed to it. We always release our Tuesday seeds every Tuesday. Well, Monday night technically, but it's open every Tuesday at least. So you can wake up in the morning, get your education. We have Phil and Uriah always creating educational videos where you can learn, grow, and prosper as a grower, farmer, or rancher in your community. And yes, so thank y'all so much. Stay blessed, eat healthy, support your local farmer, and as always, be the exception.
All right.
Good night, y'all. Good night, y'all.